because this edge is missing, so it's a bit tricky to get it straight. So I'm taking that down to the same height. It's so heavy, this piece of wood. It's because it's fresh timber. Be a bit careful. Oh, that's better. We've just got to sort out the other end, make it the same distance from the house in both ends. It's still got to go that way a little bit, but obviously it's taking too long now, so I'm just going to do it twice. It'll be easier once the first cut is made. So, normally you just luft it down until it reaches what's underneath, but here I'm putting it into an existing building, so I have to have the right amount sticking up above. It has to be 14 centimetres above, otherwise I'm going to have problems. So I'm going to go down 7.5 centimetres, which is 3 inches. The point about these cheeks is that because you've got these flat surfaces, you have this intersection, so you can use the spirit level to find the lod line. These cheeks are a little bit damaged because the bottom ones could take so much weight, take the weight of the whole building, so they often get deformed. And they've been in the house for a while. So it's not really a very good example to teach because it's very tricky. But the point is that that line through space is the same as long as you keep it going through the vertical axis. That's why the cheeks, that's why you use the cheeks, and that's why you use these kind of pencils, and that's why you use this kind of meter ruler. So beginners make a lot of mistakes with this, the direction of these planes, because they try to do the same thing on both sides or in all the places, and that's not how it works. the way it works is actually where the intersection is, which you find out using these vertical tools, you know, the load. So it's that where the intersection of that and this cross is where the line has to end, you know, the line has to start through this plane of the cheek. That's the plane. The thing is, a lot of people think very two-dimensionally. It's quite difficult because this is a very, very three-dimensional practice. And I use the pencil flat against the surface so I can keep it through the same plane always. I don't change the angle because that would change where the line draws up. So I have to make an allowance for the thickness between this edge and to the pencil tip, which is about 3 or 4 millimeters. It's about 3, maybe 2 or 3 millimeters. So I have to be 2 or 3 millimeters away from the point with the ruler. That way my pencil is at 0, which is what I want. But this surface isn't quite flat, and that actually shows the problems with restoration. When it's new, it would be completely flat, and that would make it a lot easier. When it's old like this, it's damaged surface, so it's not quite flat. So I'm actually going to go down to about 3 or 4 millimeters further up, so the cheeks for this have to be 3 or 4 millimeters further up as well. And they stick out about 6 centimeters. So the cheeks are going to come here, and I know how to do this just from experience, really. Now I do exactly the same thing on the other side. When I'm marking, I've tried to create a discipline for myself where I mark once correctly. I try not to keep on marking the same point again and again, because you don't really need a thicker pencil line than the one stripe. And if you do it more than once, you might make a mistake the second time. Then you have 2 lines, one that's correct and one that's wrong. So I find it better to just do it once, and then that way if you do it wrong, you can cross that once out and do it again once. Just keep on taking away the blades until I've got the right thickness. Or adding them. And every cheek is unique because none of them are made, they're all just kind of handmade, and usually, actually they're often made by eye. So and then also very important not to forget is the width of the throat, which has to be marked underneath. Because that piece of wood has to be left where that opening is. So there's a piece of wood that goes through the inside of the head of the timber to make it slightly stronger. These have all special names in Norwegian, and they have regional differences as well. So those lines there were showing the throat. This opening is called the gap, which is just like a gap, and that's called the hals, the throat. So then I just cut all of this away. I'm going to do it with a chainsaw because it's a bit quicker. I had to spend a bit of time setting up my saw, my axe, which should have been chipped. So it's a bit of time wasted today. too wide, that one. Right, that's clear that that throat there is too big. Don't want it resting on that, but of course you want to leave as much of it there as you can, really, because that's what gives the head the strength. And the fact that the heads can fall off easily is one of the weak points of this system. But I think they became unfashionable. They certainly became shorter and shorter historically, which is not a good thing. It's better that the head is a bit longer, really, for the strength, for the sake of strength. But of course, the further it sticks out, the wetter it gets. So every little aspect is has a particular result. So, the fact is, the traditional houses had, where the weather permitted it, they had a lot of overshadowed. The walls were well overshadowed by the roof. Tak utstikk, as it's called in Norwegian. Right, because the saw went in straight, it's always going to be the right plane. Although I'm taking off these shinning, might use the Lafting for that. Bit tricky with gloves on that. I need to go just slightly past the point for the more accurate second measurement. Again, and the idea here is that these cheeks are straight. And they have to be straight through both of those axes, not just one of them. There's some people that make them scooped. That's a mistake. They need to be straight through both axes. Some people use a plane for this as well, but that's tricky because the plane doesn't get far enough in to do it. A bump in the middle. So it's a bit cold to hold the axe today. It's kind of difficult to do it in gloves, but it is -12 now. It's quite cold. do it. Also, I don't need to do it absolutely perfectly, like as if it were a house for living in, because that's not how this old house was built. And this is restoration, so I'm trying to make it in the same spirit as the original work. I don't want to change the intentions just because I can do it better doesn't mean I should. Oh, this is so heavy, this piece, isn't it? I don't want it falling off on the ground again. It's so difficult to get it up there. I have to use the jack straps to get it up. I can't really lift it as a dead weight. I've had a bit of bad back recently. I don't want to make it worse. So this should be very tight. First go. Anyway, it's done exactly what I wanted. That's good. And all four are touching the way they should. This hulk is still too big. Although we don't need these either anymore, really. Those points. You can leave them there, but sometimes they get stuck on those. I often just take them away. They're not going to make any difference to the structure. Structural integrity won't be compromised because of taking those away. I'm just going to take and as is often the case with my lafting, it looks a bit messy in the beginning, but it gets neater as you go on because you go deeper, cut away some of the mistakes. Well, they're not mistakes as such, it's just there's no point in doing it too, no point being too pedantic right at the beginning, because you want to get it done quite quickly. And I know that it's going to be adjusted. Now it's quite important to make sure that this piece of timber is exactly the same distance from the wall at both ends, like the other piece of timber is. That way it doesn't really matter if the house isn't square, I'm doing it the same as the old building. That's 54, 1 more centimetre. Now it's also several centimetres lower, so I'm now going to lower the other piece of wood. Have to be the same height, parallel as to how they were before. Everything has to be parallel all the way through the process. So I've now straightened up so that it's perfectly vertical the way it should be.